Hey guys, Tyro here, and in the spirit of the Commander Terminator coming up, I'm going to be showing you one of my off-meta builds, the Fast 223 with OKW. To play this strategy, you will need to equip the Elite Armoured Commander, and then the basic build order is Volksgrenadier into Sturmpioneer into Truck into 221. Volksgrenadiers first because they build approximately 4 seconds faster than Sturmpioneers, allowing you to get onto the map and start capping territory earlier. The second squad of Sturmpioneers to have 2 squads available to repair up the 221, minimizing its downtime, and the extra manpower that they cost over Volksgrenadiers does not slow down the 221 timing with this build. A truck next because you need the truck out but not deployed to be able to build the 221. And then the 221 itself. I found it much more effective building it at this earlier timing, having built only 2 squads instead of 3 for a couple reasons. USF riflemen have had less time to vet up, making them further away from Vet 1 where they gain access to their anti-tank grenade. This means you can drive in close to maximize your DPS or push them out of cover without worry of getting snared. Against the British, the 221 will arrive before the Universal Carrier upgraded with the Vickers using the standard build, and just in general you will have more time to do damage with your 221 before a larger light vehicle arrives to counter it, such as an AEC, Stuart, T70 or AA half-track. And from here the build is Volksgrenadier into battlegroup HQ, though you could consider skipping the Volksgrenadier and going straight into battlegroup HQ, especially if you're up against a WC-51 or a Universal Carrier with the Vickers and you really need the extra durability of the 223 to fight against these. In the early game I tend to play more defensively than standard OKW play, capping up my side of the map as quickly as possible to get the resources for the 221 as quickly as possible. Also, because you don't have a continuous stream of Volksgrenadiers arriving, you tend not to have enough support to maintain a strong early push. Then, once the 221 arrives, start to get really aggressive. To get the most out of the 221, it is good to know its performance against light vehicles that arrive at a similar timing. Against the WC-51, the 221 loses both close and long range, and it gets even worse when a squad is placed inside the WC-51. Against the unupgraded Universal Carrier, the 221 will win up close but lose long range. And then once upgraded with the Vickers, the 221 loses up close and loses badly long range. Both of these light vehicles have a limited cone of fire facing forwards, as displayed here, whereas the 221 can fire in every direction, giving you the opportunity to outposition them by firing on their rear. Against the M3A1, the 221 loses up close but wins long range. This is a very close matchup and a squad inside can make the difference. However, the M3A1 has a quirk where the rear machine gun does more DPS and has more penetration than the one on the front. In spite of this, the 221 should win both close and long range. However, it is a super close matchup and the squad inside can make the difference. The 221 is quite fragile, losing badly to a blob of infantry, so try look for isolated squads with it, or against SMG squads, especially on the rear armor. And this is where the 223 upgrade comes in. It requires a truck to be converted, either battlegroup or mechanized, and it gives the light vehicle plus 80 health and 5 more armor front and rear, making it much more resilient to small arms fire. But this is where the strategy can fall off the rails. Battlegroup takes a relatively long time to upgrade at 45 seconds. Also, the 221 needs to be in friendly territory to start the upgrade, and the upgrade takes 30 seconds to complete. These delays can be punishing if you're in a losing matchup against one of those other light vehicles. On top of that, you are investing a lot of resources into tech, potentially falling one squad behind on the battlefield, which is ultimately the reason why this particular build, although fun, is not top tier. A couple tips through this phase of the game. I do recommend getting a set of med crates with your Sturmpioneers in spite of going for the battlegroup HQ. This is to heal up your troops before the medics come online, which you may want to delay slightly considering all of the other ticking costs you are having to pay. And check the veterancy on Vet 0 rifles before charging in so you don't get surprised by an anti-tank grenade. From here, if things are going exceptionally well, you can pick up an MG34 to try and keep up the pressure. But most likely you're going to need to build the Raketin. During this phase you're going to need to be more defensive with the 223 since it loses head to head against their light vehicle. common tactics during this phase are to bait an opposing light vehicle into a mine, use it on the other side of the map to the opposing light vehicle, or use it in more of a support role with Fausts and the Raketa nearby. The 223 works well as a support vehicle, having 50 sight range compared to the standard 35, and it goes up to 65 range at Vet 3. The 223 also gains access to the signal relay ability, allowing it to spot armor on the tactical/minimap out to 85 range. A couple tips through this phase. Because you've gone for double Sturmpioneers, you can afford to get a Shrek on one of them if you need some extra anti-tank. This is especially good on a map that has a strong building from which they can fire. You can set up the 223 close to base if it is damaged and the Sturmpioneers are currently occupied for a little bit of extra resources. And the 221 and 223 can drop single-use med crates, which can be helpful for healing up on the front line. You also gain access to smoke at Vet 1, so use that to keep your 223 or squad safe. The goal from here is to get a fast Schwerer HQ down, ideally covering your cutoff and fuel point. The position will vary from map to map, and you may need to place it more defensively if you don't think you can get it up safely in an aggressive position. You generally need this slightly more aggressive positioning to buy some breathing room against the opponent's light vehicle. From here, you may want to pull the 223 out of combat duty and set it up on one of these Schwerer HQ defended resource points. At some stage you'll probably mix in an MG34 and a set of Obers, and if you're really behind or up against double light vehicles, it might be worth picking up a second Raketen. Now it's Panzer IV time, and I generally upgrade the first one with the machine gun instead of the Panzer Commander to maximize infantry bleed. Heat shells unlock at 7 command points and give you plus 30% penetration and plus 30% damage while active. This allows your Panzer IV to 2-hit 400 health light vehicles such as the Stuart or T70, which can be really helpful. Against regular 640 health mediums, the heat shells are still 4 shots to kill or 3 shots in a snare, which can be handy, and you'll probably want the bonus penetration that the heat shells offer against these tanks anyway. And against premium mediums like the 800 HP T-3485, they will die in 4 shots instead of 5, which can be big. And if you ever do get the King Tiger, with the heat shells equipped, it can blast through the health of opposing heavies. You also have the emergency repairs ability, which heals 300 health and removes criticals. You can activate this after being out of combat for 10 seconds, and I use this the majority of times my tanks take more than 1 shot worth of damage. The Panzer Commander upgrade gives your tank plus 10% accuracy, plus 10 sight range, and access to the coordinated barrage off-map artillery strike. This can be really handy for dropping on team weapons during a big engagement, forcing your opponent to move it or lose it, and even having the potential to wipe out 6-man Soviet weapon teams. I tend to upgrade the Panzer Commander on my second Panzer IV, and the King Tiger, who can really benefit from the extra sight the Panzer Commander upgrade gives with its 45 range gun. Finally, last and least for this commander is the Sturmtiger. I wouldn't recommend getting this if you want to win, but if you're quite far ahead, it can be a good meme. A couple tips for the faction specific matchups. Against Soviets, I generally do not recommend this strategy. Conscripts can take AT grenades early, and combined with Ura really limits the effectiveness of the 221. And the matchup against Tier 1 is also bad, with a PTRS penal inside an M3 hard countering the 223. Stacked on top of that, the most popular commanders have guards, M42s and Dishkas, really limiting the effectiveness of the 221. Against US forces it is pretty good, except if you're up against the WC-51, which is one of the most popular commanders at the moment. And against Brits it is decent if they're not rushing for the UC with the Vickers, or get greedy and try to go for infantry upgrades before getting the AEC. And there you go, a detailed look at maybe a C-tier strategy, so if you're looking for a challenge or maybe just to try something different, why not give it a spin? A special thank you goes out to my Patreon backers, and if you'd like to see more in this series, consider coming on board.